So May is coming to an end, and the summertime is about to start here in San Diego. Be good. The ocean temperature is warming up. And you know what happens here along the coast is the marine layer is disappearing, which means May gray may not turn into June gloom this year because the ocean is warming up. Now you get a little bit inland, say 10, 15 miles away from the ocean, and the land is hot. And it could be 15, 20 degrees. So, world of difference, clearer skies, people are in their swimming pools. But it's not that way along the coast. When we go out walking, you got to wear like a plaid flannel shirt. If the sun breaks through, it's very warm, so we take that off. We love walking along the waterfront in the harbor, on the harbor islands, uh, and you should come visit. Seaport Village is a fun place, lots to do, places to walk, great places to eat. Seafood's terrific. Today we're going to be talking about California as an attraction, as a business attraction. Now, I personally relocated from Boston to LA in the Century City area, Beverly Hills, in 1980. That's a really long time ago. I was publishing a brand new item, a magazine, glossy, color, packed full of relocation guidance, information about Southern California, where to live, what makes one area, one community, one region different from another, housing, weather, schools, demographics. The freeway system, for those of you not from this area, is terrific. It was laid out a very long time ago. It still works. Only problem is there's a lot of cars. So there is rail uh, and some bus service, but I don't know, more than 90% use cars. Even in this age of remote or work from home, work from anywhere, people are still in their cars. It's safe, it's convenient, relatively inexpensive. California, we pay more for gas. We just go off across the state line into Arizona or Nevada, and gas prices fall at least $1 a gallon cheaper. Why? Well, past governors have set up a cash flow using the extra dollar a gallon. It goes into a piggy bank, a rainy day fund, and the geniuses invest the money. So the money just grows and grows and grows. And it actually provides a safety cushion. The state is huge population. Economically speaking, California is the world's fourth largest gross domestic product, GDP. Now, of course, it's part of the U.S., but it's a huge contributor to the U.S. Seaports, agriculture, the entertainment industry is huge and pervasive throughout Southern California and throughout California, but it's mostly Southern California. And it's an international industry. Here in San Diego, it's the headquarters for the U.S. Navy Pacific Fleet. It's such a large organization, they have multiple headquarters, but this is ground zero. As a result, it's extremely protected 24/7, 365. So San Diego is a safe place to be. Good weather, nice people for the most part, and lots of opportunity, especially with electronics, biotech, everything connected. So come join us. Let's talk about California. We'll be right back. This is Ed back in San Diego with our guest, Chris Lechner. Is it Lechner or Lechner?
Lechner.
Okay, that's great. Weichert Global Point. Tell us about Global Point.
Global Point is a Southern California real estate brokerage focusing on relocation real estate. We cover the 5 largest counties here in Southern California, San Diego, Riverside, Orange, Los Angeles, and Ventura counties, and all the cities that make up those counties.
It's vast. Wow.
Vast landscape there, so to speak.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question about dealing with all that. You must have a team.
Oh, definitely, yeah. We've got uh, multiple relocation trained agents that have been in the business for over 10 years, and serve our relocation clients, RMCs and corporations.
That's great. Hi, Teresa. Welcome.
Hey Ed, how are you?
Good. Sarge, hello. Welcome.
Hi, Teresa.
Okay, so let's do introductions. Uh, this is an old friend from Europe. Actually, we're both from the Boston area originally, but that was a long time ago. Sarge Carlson, welcome. It looks like you're in Nantucket. Sarge, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. I'm looking at your picture behind you. Are you in Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard? Where are
No,
you?
it's actually Cap Ferret in Bordeaux.
Oh,
But I'm not
indeed.
there. I'm not
Much
there.
better.
That's
Much better than either one of those other ones.
Oh, that's terrific. I want you to meet Chris Lechner, who's
Nope.
a real estate relocation broker in Southern California. We were just discussing his company, Global Point, which is a relocation company, a real estate company covering all of Southern California, and that's such a huge area and so diverse. And with us is the best oldest friend in relocation in Southern California, Teresa Howe. Thank you.
Don't say oldest, say longest.
I'm sorry I misspoke. So out there, just delete what I said. Well, you look terrific.
Thanks. We've known each other a long time, huh, Ed?
Yeah, I remember when I got off the boat in LA from Boston last century. It was 1980, and I think I traipsed into. I think I was wearing a tie, but I think I walked around Beverly Hills and walked into the John Douglas office,
Yeah.
and there you were.
Yeah.
And
Well, they wouldn't have been 80 because I didn't get here till 88. But yeah, I
oh my
think we
God.
met each other in 88 for sure.
Oh, I'm getting so confused. And Sarge and I met, I think it was sometime, it was after 9/11, sometime between 2005 and 2010. Is that about right in your memory, Sarge?
Yeah, it is. It was after I started with Nestle. So I started with Nestle in 2006. So yeah, it had to be probably 7, 8, somewhere thereabouts. Yeah.
Yeah. So Nestle in Vevey?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's Switzerland, everybody. Beautiful place.
Yeah.
And during that time, I was really active in producing live meetings across Europe and other places, of course. But um, Sarge was so welcoming. He worked in Nestle Corporation, and I had been introduced to some others within Nestle by way of this group called Permits Foundation. Permits was based in Amsterdam and was put together by spouses, mainly women. I say 99.9% were women at the time. The spouses of transferred executives into corporate Switzerland and other places. and the spouses were not allowed to work, even though they were super qualified. And so there grew an organization beautifully run and fully documented and called Permits Foundation, and that was to work with legislators in various countries around Europe, talking about the common sense to allow spouses to work. Sarge, would you like to comment on that?
You know, it's really interesting time to be in Switzerland, and I've now lived in the US since 2018, so I left Switzerland then. But I would just tell you a little anecdote. My wife is French, and um, I still remember she was working, so we were both working, and our children were starting to get into school period, and we had to figure out how to do that because schools in Switzerland, at least then, I think still today, the public schools, and they're very good schools. You basically start around 8:30. They think it's reasonable time to start is at that kind of time. But then at lunchtime, they don't really feed you lunch. So you have to pick up your children, take them home, feed them, and bring them back.
Oh,
Right. So that
no.
was that was the time then, right? Who knows? Maybe they've changed now, but that's how it was. And I think it's still that same way. And then their school would finish around 3 o'clock. And schools in Switzerland, as like France or any other European countries, they don't typically, it's all for school. They don't have clubs, they don't have sports, they don't, and that's not the norm, right? So you then have to find a way to pick up your child as well after them. So my wife went down to the um, local government office to ask about those things because she was perturbed that there wasn't other options. But she went down to ask about, what are the options in terms of what we can do. And their answer to her was, um, well, you should stay at home and not work. I'll still never forget my wife coming home and telling me that story. She was not happy. She didn't
Sure.
get anything useful from them either. And we ended up actually deciding to put our children, even though it was more expensive. Um, Believe it or not, it was less expensive in a way, but more expensive into an international school. Because again, in the Swiss schools, you were being taught in French, and that's okay because my kids were obviously learning French at home. My wife's French, but um, we wanted also to have English for them. And in the international schools, the one we found, they would teach half and half, half of the class, half in English, half is in French. That's what we wanted. And even the cost of us paying for that was just a bit more per year than the cost it would have been to get help for us for like in the morning, the drop off, the lunch pickup, and someone taking care of our child, in the afternoon until we got home from work. Right. So we put them in international school where they got lunch, where they had some sports. We dropped them off and before 8. We could pick them up around 5:30.
And they were taken care of professionally.
Yeah, yeah, great
Yeah,
education. So
yeah, interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's kind of was, but it's, I have to tell you, one last thing I'll tell you is that, you know, it worked. They believe that the foundation of the family is, that way, that there should be someone at home taking care of the children in order to make sure that they have, that semblance of home life all the time. So that kind of works in Switzerland. When you're an expat, it doesn't work because your mindset just doesn't work.
Right. What do you think of that, Chris?
Well, it's every cultural society is varies quite a bit.
Yeah. So even in Southern California, it varies from place
Yeah.
to place. So demographically, Southern California is a huge place. Okay. It's great. It's amazing how big it is, especially if you're stuck in traffic. But but it is from where I am in downtown San Diego, which is that scene behind me. I'm tucked behind that building with the green lights. Um, and Seaport Village is to the right there. Oh, that way. No, that way. And the this picture I took from the Sheridan Airport, Sheridan. Airport's very close to downtown. And you can't see it, but that's San Diego Bay. It's a huge water, very, very well protected. Is the scene of the headquarters of the Pacific Fleet, Navy, and very extremely well protected and guarded uh, by the military 24/7. It's a very safe place to be. But a lot going on here in San Diego, but it's very, very different 25 miles or so east of here, where you get into the mountains in eastern San Diego County, and it's very rural, and the people are different. Uh, and not that they're bad, it's just different from people on the coast of Southern California, particularly San Diego. Laid back San Diego lifestyle. Now, I grew up in Boston, in Brookline, a little suburb outside of the Fenway Park, and Sarge grew up on the North Shore, if I remember right, Salem or Swampscott or someplace like that.
Actually, South Shore.
Oh,
Ed.
South Shore. Oh,
Yeah, South Shore. Yeah.
yeah, great. So is that near Cape Cod?
Close enough, but not in Cape Cod. Yeah.
Okay. So our friend Teresa grew up in Texas. Where in Texas?
Dallas,
North Dallas or what?
yeah.
Yeah.
Richardson, which is just the first suburb north of Dallas,
Yeah.
which
Okay.
was, when I was a child, that was like nobody lived out there. My parents moved out there from Dallas, and it was like moving out to the country, because it's part of Dallas, really.
Yeah, so now is that north of that's north along I forget that freeway, but it
75.
yeah, so that
Central.
goes up to like Frisco or
Yeah.
someplace,
So
right?
it's like, yeah, I mean, Allen, Frisco, I mean, Dallas goes on forever if you really, it's all jammed together. They're different cities, but they're all jammed together now.
So
It's
it
cool.
goes almost into Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, practically, practically.
Okay, great. And then it goes west all the way across into Fort Worth
Hmm.
and beyond, and that's where the west begins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the area between Dallas and Oklahoma City, is that cowboy land, oil, vast open, or is it farms?
It's not farms, but it's like I said, Dallas goes really far north now, and then there's not that much in between. So that would be, that's, in there's oil country wherever they can make it happen. So,
Right.
you know, having not been up in that area in a long time, I don't know what it's like now. It could be completely populated, but it didn't used to be. When we would drive up to Oklahoma or Oklahoma City or whatever, it was, nothing. But now it probably is.
So let's talk about Southern California for a bit. As I mentioned earlier, I relocated from Boston into LA, West LA, Century City area, in 1980. Thought about doing it from about 1976, but despite several trips in and out, I always went back to Boston. And once you do that, it just gets settled in and just thinking about all the hassles of relocation and the risk and the moving and don't know anybody and I'd be a stranger and who am I? And so I always went back to Boston. And then one day I just said, I'm out of here. And finally got off the plane and at LAX and never looked back. And uh, I had published a magazine, a relocation recruitment tool called Settling in Greater Boston during the late 70s. I took the idea from a lot of recruitment guides. It was meant to be a recruitment guide, particularly for what's called Route 128 around Boston, which is the high-tech belt, was and still is. But back then they were recruiting engineers, computer scientists, and nobody really knew what that meant at the time, except people at Harvard and MIT and the Defense Department, who were building something called the internet, but it wasn't called that at the time. And so they were bringing in engineers, the scientists that created the whole network idea, who were from England, Oxford and Cambridge, and they were bringing them into Harvard and MIT and getting them settled. And nobody knew. I had made entree through the help of two connections I had made in an investment company that I worked in downtown Boston before developing the relocation magazine idea, and came across these two guys who were recruiters, hotshot recruiters in high tech. And that was unheard of almost at the time. And this is in the mid 70s. And they said, what are you doing? I said, I'm getting out of the investment business as fast as I can. I was selling municipal bond things. And so I'm into PR and advertising, and I'm going to create a guidebook for recruitment for the Route 128 companies. And I did. And they became customers because one worked at Harvard, the other one worked at MIT, and then a friend worked in this company whose name escapes me right now, but they were developing in a program. At the time, it was secret. It's not secret anymore. The Polaris submarine launch capability of underwater shooting missiles up from underwater and making them hit a target thousands of miles away. That's the level of engineers that were being recruited from Oxford and Cambridge into Harvard and MIT to make the internet commercial and work. And that's the recruitment side of things. And it turned out to be relocation information as well. So I made introductions to some realtors who I had met around digital equipment and Wang Laboratories and Raytheon and something else, I forget. And they settled these people, mostly guys, into expensive homes. And then they were recruited as well to bring in others from Purdue, USC, Berkeley, uh, other schools around the US into Boston. And that was the guidebook that I created for that. And then I sold it in 1980 and moved to LA, taking the idea for California Bound Relocation Guide. I had made contact with the LA Chamber of Commerce, cold call, on a inspection trip back then, wore a suit and tie and brought a copy of the Boston Guide and said, I want to do this for LA, but I don't know anything about your region and I need help. So I need a partner. And they made me sign a contract of non-disclosure and blah, blah, blah. And they said, we'll help you if you don't screw up. And if you don't screw up and you publish this thing for Southern California and we'll help you organize it, then we'll become your partner in distribution to all the corporations. And that's how we started California Bound. Okay, so when I landed in 1980, it was like a parachute into Beverly Hills. All right, it was set. I just had to do it and don't screw up. So I drove all around the freeways, in the area where Global Point is working now. I was trying to find my way to that community and that community. And I walked into, as I mentioned earlier, real estate relocation offices in Beverly Hills, Coldwell Banker, and I met some old crusty guy, was a manager, and he took me under his wing and says, you got a good thing going here. Don't blow it
Hmm.
because you're going to get one chance. And the people here are used to people with big ideas coming in and stealing money and not delivering. And don't be one of those people or you're going to get thrown out of here. And so I did it right. And the magazine became an instant hit. It was great all through the 80s. So, Sarge, the relocation aspect that I'm describing here is full of trial and error and personal trauma. And I experienced it. With me at the time, I brought a bride and her 13-year-old daughter into the Beverly Hills school system. That was terrible for me and very traumatic for them. We worked it out. We wound up getting divorced. It was a very expensive divorce, but we remained friends. But that was after building several editions of the California Bound. And then we split. There's consequence for every action, and relocation is traumatic by itself, right, Chris?
Oh,
You
yeah.
have a lot of things going on. Just imagine the victims of the fires recently in Palisades and Altadena, not to mention other areas previously. Think of all the trauma those people are going through. Where are the kids going to school? Where can they find housing in Southern California? It's very expensive anyway. And now, it's human nature, people are coming from Palisades looking for a house to rent, if not buy.
I
Have
think,
you been involved in that?
yeah, helping people with, yeah, with rentals as well as purchase properties, but a lot of that is settled out right now with the insurance companies that had jumped in pretty quickly and found housing for most everybody. Some people have moved out, left the state, and um, the a lot of people have done that. Had left the state, and then others were, finding temporary housing in surrounding communities. But the big problem is the lack of inventory of properties to help these people. We lost quite a few homes in the Palisades area. That community is pretty well wiped out, and the rebuild efforts are going to take at least 5 to 7 years to put something in out there. Some of the city, there's discussions of whether or not how to rebuild, whether it's going to be, single family homes, or the city and the county want them to put more multifamily properties in there for others, to increase the density of the communities, which will be a big fight and lawsuits against that with some of the homeowners there, because that area was primarily single family homes. The Altadena area, that the rebuild efforts there are moving a little bit faster than they are in the Palisades, because that's a whole different city government environment out there, and so it's challenging when dealing with the politics of things for these.
So the emotional, you know, I don't know what's really going on. Can you comment on how people are being helped emotionally, Teresa?
Well, I think I want to back up to kind of what we were talking about before, if you don't mind, Ed.
I don't mind.
The challenge with one of the things about the Palisades area is that most of those people are pretty wealthy, right? So a lot of them had actually second homes. So many of them have moved into their second homes and are living there, or have gone to other parts of the world to live while they figure out what they're doing. So, the Altadena area, much different,
Right.
still got some high-end areas in it, but it's a different area for sure. But, the challenges right now, besides the emotional toll that it's taken on everyone, is that, 95% of the people in both areas agreed to take FEMA. And when you take FEMA, you're at the mercy of the government on how the clearing is happening. So,
What do you mean? So, sorry, Teresa, what do you mean to take FEMA?
So you can either not participate in FEMA. If you take FEMA, that
But that's a
means,
federal program,
yeah,
right?
federal emergency, what does the M?
Medical.
Management.
Yeah, so that means the government is going to be responsible for clearing the land. And that's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So
Okay.
the 5% that didn't are paying for it themselves. And they're paying for the clearing, they're paying for all that stuff themselves, which is, I don't know why anybody would do it, but it's faster. But FEMA in 28 days got all of the toxic waste cleared out of the Palisades. I'm not sure how long it took them exactly in Altadena, but that is unbelievable because it was, you know, you have asbestos because they're old homes, you have batteries, you have gasoline, you have toxic, you know, so many things. So they got all that stuff cleared out because you can't clear the rest of it. You can't mix it all together, right? So they did that in 28 days. And so now they're clearing, my last statistic that I saw was about 120 lots a day. Well, there are 6,000 lots in the Palisades alone. And so, but they're doing 120 a day. And so I have several friends that live up there. And one of my friends, Scott, I just talked to him and they just got their lot cleared. So everything's, it's a flat, empty lot. And so now they can start moving forward with, you know, permits and all that. Everybody's trying to get the permits as it is, but you know, the way it's working right now is that if you build within the same footprint, within, I think, 10 feet, the permit process is moving along pretty quick. If you want to change the shape or make
Mm.
it bigger significantly, it's a problem. So most people are trying to stay within their footprint if they can. Um,
Footprint
and
meaning they can't expand on the land
they
because
can't
that's legal.
make the footprint of where the house was much
Ah,
bigger or
okay,
different. They have
okay.
to stay in the exact how the house was. Because what they don't want is these big old mega houses, you know, on these tiny lots. So you know, most of those houses were built anywhere between the 20s and the 50s. That, you know, they were beautiful, beautiful homes and you know, very unique. And so we've got the situation now that everybody's meeting with architects and builders, and you know, some I think they've sold. Oh, as of a couple of weeks ago, they'd already sold about 10 lots, and most of those had been to builders. That's people that are just selling and getting out. They're just like too old. They don't want to mess with it, whatever. They're just leaving. But some of them are going to builders, some are going to other people that are willing to come in and build. But it's you know, it's a massive undertaking because they also didn't have, you know, water. They didn't have water that you could drink. So even the people whose homes were spared couldn't live there. You know, my friend Fran, who I wrote a blog post about, you know, she had to live in a hotel for nearly 3 months, even though her house didn't burn down, because there was so much ash and smoke damage that they wouldn't let her go back in, and she couldn't drink the water. So
Wow.
even the people whose homes didn't burn down, she was right on the edge. Her daughter's home burned down, but she was right on the edge. You know, she couldn't even live there. So now she's back in her home, which is great. But you know, they're really at the mercy of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers who are scraping the lots. So, you know, nobody, even if they have an architect and they have their permit, they can't build until everything gets the okay that it's clear to build.
What about the emotional side of things? Are there armies of priests and rabbis and counselors running around?
I don't think so.
Uh,
I don't think so. That's not my vibe that I'm
Yeah.
getting, but I think it's, you know, just from talking to my friends who were, you know, very impacted very directly, you know, really, really emotional. And I guess my friend Liz said, she said, you know, it's just stuff. You know, her daughter was away at college, you know, and so all her, you know, you know, her childhood home burnt down. And she said, oh, it's fine. You know, you had the stuff with you that was important to you. And, you know, you just have to you can't get too attached to it. And while there were lives lost, you know, it could have been much, much, much worse. And I think uh, there's solace in the fact that all these people are together, that they all lost not just their homes, they lost their schools, They lost their libraries, they lost their grocery stores, they lost their doctor's office. I have a friend who lost, he's a manager of a real estate office. He lost his home and his office. So, think about the trauma of that. He didn't like have anywhere to go, right? So, his company's helping him. They moved all his agents to another branch close by.
So
And
how are the realtors dealing with the loss of the listings and the
well,
prospect?
I
I mean,
think,
it's just poof, went
yeah.
away.
Well, and a lot of them were in escrow. I mean, and you have all that you have to deal with. But again, I think they've all come together because they're all in the same boat. So I think that's where it's been helpful is that they're all kind of helping one another and working together to do that. But it's emotionally very raw still. I mean, it's
Definitely.
going to take a long time, I think, before people feel like that's a home again.
Mm.
So,
Definitely.
so Chris, did you help people from that Palisades area get into Orange County? I guess they think it's a safe place.
Oh, yeah, there's a number of them went down to Orange County from the Palisades area, looking down there. And to Teresa's point, those that were pretty much done with the Southern California environment, with all the other issues surrounding it, they left the state or other parts of the world. Um, but Orange County did pick up a number of people, as did surrounding communities such as Marina Del Rey for in the condos and homes in that area for rentals, and then down into out into the Westlake Village, Thousand Oaks area too.
Yeah, some people
Yeah,
ended up in Santa Barbara,
Yeah, Santa
Montecito.
Barbara. That's
Yeah.
right.
I thought some people might come into San Diego here downtown where I am. There's been a building boom. Um, High rises, mostly rentals, some condo towers, but it's most high rise luxury. But
It's good. There's a big building surge down there with that. Yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
was just
right
down there
now,
last month, and I
yeah.
mean, cranes, skyscraper cranes all over the place.
Yeah, right. Just behind where I am in this picture here, you see that vertical red pink light? That's on the side of a 40-story apartment building, overlooking the water. And just to our left of that, if you will, is Little Italy area, which is very, very hot tourist area and economic boom over the past 4 or 5 years. Started before COVID and just taken off after COVID with new construction, high-rise construction, rentals, and more planned. So the density, it's getting like New York in
Yeah.
terms of high-rise density. So very interesting. Sarge, you came back into the U.S., but as we talked the other day, you mentioned that your your wife is still spending time in France, staying close to mom.
Yes. No, that's a good
Yeah,
question. Yeah, no. Yeah, I came back. Yeah, like I said, I came back in 2018, but we stay in touch with the French family. And no, it's really interesting to hear this California topic from another perspective because, within AMCN, the company I'm working at, AMC Networks, we have a office out there in LA. And so we have one of the people who works on my team in HR, he was out there and was just describing it, how it was happening, you could see it and all that. But hearing your details makes it even more come alive. You don't think about all the after effects, like, from our perspective, you're worried about it as it's happening, are the people safe, you're getting them out and all that. But once the fire stops, right, we stop communicating about it, right? As a company. So it's really interesting to hear, be reminded of all the stuff that still has to come afterwards. Yeah.
One of the things that one of my friends said that kind of struck me, I hadn't really thought about. So the people with children had to put their kids in other schools, right? So there's no schools left. So some of them were hesitant to rebuild because they feel like they're going to bond with these children in this new school, and then they don't want to take them out at some point if they're very young and put them back in a school. So many of them are just going to sell their lots and just move to the area where their kids are in school and stay there because they don't want that disruption for the children to have to try to go back to, and who knows when the schools are going to be ready. And if even if the schools are ready, you don't know whether their home would be ready. So then they would be, commuting if they went back to school. So the ones with children, I think, are really thinking it through because they don't want to be disruptive. The kids obviously are traumatized, needless to say, but I think they don't want to be more disruptive by moving the children back into a community where they don't really know the kids anymore because they've been gone and been made friends with other kids in other schools.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
thing about Southern California in particular is it's an extremely wealthy area in terms of resources, um, and California economy, gross domestic, GDP, whatever it's called, it's huge. And aerospace, tech, entertainment industry, of course, real estate development, economic development throughout, and the beat goes on. It's such an amazing place. World's fourth largest GDP, bigger than countries. So there's so many resources here that even though it's expensive to be here, it's more expensive in Europe than it is in California. But people live and the beat goes on.